Hey students, welcome back to Mass Communication Theory. Professor Golan here on a sunny day in Plano, Texas. Last week we spoke about the agenda setting theory, which is really one of the most seminal theories in mass communication research. Today I want to augment the discussion a little more by discussing the agenda building function. I'm going to give you a quick overview of agenda setting and all of its different parts, just as a review to last week's discussion board, which you guys did a good job on. And today I want to talk to you a little bit more about the agenda building function, which you'll read about in the assigned readings and you'll write about in your assignments. So let's begin. I'm going to share a screen with you and give you a little bit of a background. Okay, so give it a second. Okay, so as you read, the unique thing about the agenda setting theory is that it moved away from the idea that the media is all powerful. It moved away from the hypodermic needle model that sort of said, hey, propaganda works and we can really influence people's attitudes. And the agenda setting perspective is one that focuses away from attitude change and towards cognition. The process of audience learning about the importance of issues or the salience of issues from the news media agenda. So the famous saying by Bernard Cohen is that the news media, will not tell people what to think, but rather what to think about. And this was really brought into fruition by the agenda setting study, McCombs and Shaw, 1972, seminal study. This opened the door to a brand new area of research with hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed articles that examined the agenda setting process, how it works, and what are its key elements. In the McCombs study that you read last week, the 2005 McCombs study, he sort of broke down the 5 key elements of agenda setting. The first level of agenda setting, which really says, look, if the news media always talks about the environment, then the issue salience in the news media, the importance of the issue in the news media by mere focus, right? The repeated number of articles that are published, the news stories on TV, will transfer over to the public agenda. So if I am a news consumer, I will say, wow, it must be really important to think about, the environment. So this is why, the nature of coverage, the amount of coverage or lack of coverage really does have a real life consequence, right? If the media doesn't pick up on a story like violence in Chicago, or like the need to take vaccinations or a certain disease, or a humanitarian crisis happening in some part of the world, well, if the news media doesn't cover it, people will think it's not important and therefore are less likely to support any efforts by Congress, legislation, administration, and so forth. Right. The second level of agenda setting expands on the original hypothesis. It says, look, when the news media talks about news objects, they don't necessarily only talk about issues. They also talk about sub-issues and attributes, right? So when the news media discuss Donald Trump, they don't only speak about his foreign policy against Russia, pro-Russia, depending on where you stand, or building the wall with Mexico or trade wars with China. They also link many attributes to President Trump. Some are positive and some are negative, depending on where you consume your news media. And what the second level of agenda setting predicts is that people will learn not only about issues and sub-issues related to a news object, like the president, like Congress, like a country, like a corporation, but they also learn about the issue and attribute salience, right, regarding the attributes, right? So when I think about this organization, I should think about these attributes, right? And this is where it becomes a little more interesting, because here we're moving away from mere cognition towards something that is known as the affective dimension. It's the news media discuss news objects in a positive, negative, or neutral tone. The third part of agenda setting theory of its subcomponents is the agenda building. And we really are talking about the sources of the news media agenda. So again, who are the actors that shape the news media agenda? What is it about them that allows them to do so, or allows them, or does not allow them to do so? And oftentimes, more and more scholars are looking at how one news organization often influences the news agenda of another news organization. So we refer to this as intermedia agenda setting. Sometimes it happens because newspapers are owned by the same corporation, which oftentimes happens, or TV organizations, broadcast organizations, and oftentimes it's merely a matter of economics, dependence on news wires, etc. Last week, you read a study looking at the psychological mechanisms of agenda setting, need for orientation, and this really is a fascinating area of scholarship. Why is it that agenda setting takes place, and when is it more likely to take place more than other? And the fifth one is the outcomes. Remember, we spoke about how the salience of issues and attributes in the public agenda may lead to real-life behaviors, and this is really an emergent area right now in the scholarship. But I want to give you sort of an overview, and excuse my fancy artwork over here. We really are talking about kind of a complex theory, because, you know, at the face level, agenda setting is really no kidding, right? The news media tell you what to think about. No kidding, we know that. But when you look at the overall interplay between the different parts that make up the agenda setting theory, you're going to see that it's much more complex than it may appear, you know, at face value, right? So really looking at issues of power, of economics, of ownership, of dependence, right? So some audiences really are dependent on some news organizations for delivery of some messages or some, you know, reporting of some issues. You know, most people are pretty aware of, you know, things are always in the news, but if there's an election tomorrow in the nation of Tajikistan, how many people in the audience would really know how to make sense, right, of such an event, right? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Is this good or bad for the United States? What does this actually mean? We depend on the news and news organizations. So really understanding how news organizations can influence public opinion, right? The understanding that it's cognitive rather than attitudinal process. Looking at all the competition of sources to impact the news media agenda, and how the interplay between different news organizations may ultimately shape how the news media cover certain issues, and what issues they cover or they don't cover. So this is a little bit of a visual depiction of agenda setting. I hope it's useful to you, and I hope you enjoy the reading. I give you some readings about politics, some about not-for-profit organizations, and tons of social media. I think that anybody who reads these days agenda setting research, modern one, you see that the public really does have the ability to set the media agenda as well. Oftentimes, you know, sometimes somebody, just an individual with a cell phone, can really take over the news media for a day or two by creating interesting, relevant content, or by capturing a moment. So I look forward to reading your assignments. I'll post those really soon up on the Blackboard system. And I look forward to hearing what you think about this area of research. I find it fascinating. I hope you share my enthusiasm. Have a great day.